So, welcome to the Community Conversations, everybody. My name is Liz from the Growth Team. The Community Conversation Series is an opportunity to discuss technical developments in the ecosystem with the community itself. Today, we have our very own Harrison Hines from Fleek, a venture production studio building infrastructure on the internet computer. Please give him a warm welcome. Thank you so much for joining the show, Harrison. It is a pleasure to have you on.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Excited to do this.
Definitely. So tell us about your background. How did you become interested in Ethereum and then the internet computer?
Sure. So basically, I started because I had an interest in crowdfunding. So when the Jobs Act came out, I believe it was 2013, I was excited about crowdfunding and just democratizing access and things of that nature. The industry didn't take off the way I thought it would, just because the regulations weren't thought through that well. And so I ended up kind of leaving that industry and saw Ethereum launch. And the first use case that was really taking off was these token sales or crowdfunding, basically sales. And so it kind of just clicked to me at that point that aha, this is what crowdfunding was supposed to be this whole time. But I realized early on that it was kind of the Wild West and things were probably going to need to move to a more mature, and standards would need to be brought in for the industry and that to really take off. So I kind of had an idea to take what I learned building a crowdfunding business and apply it to the token sales that were happening on Ethereum. So this was late 2016, early 2017. At that time, there wasn't really many funds funding ideas on Ethereum, but since I lived in New York, I went to a startup night that Joe Lubin was speaking at, and at that point, he was very interested in token sales. So I basically started a company called Token Foundry out of Consensus. And we were essentially the tokenization arm of Consensus. But during the last bull run and that ICO craze, we did a lot of token sales and, dabbled a bit in security tokens and helping with regulation and so on and so forth. And then that kind of, after doing that and the ICO kind of craze fading, decided to move on to something else. And I kind of just was never really interested in the financial side of things, always interested in the more tech web side of the ecosystem. And so that's where we decided we wanted to focus on that. And we thought that that part of the ecosystem might take a little bit more time, but was going to be super important. So that's when we started Fleek about 2.5, almost 3 years ago now. And started with IPFS just because that was the main, I'd say, open web technology that was being used outside of Ethereum, but to support Ethereum use cases for front-end hosting or NFT storage. And then, I'll stop there. But that's sort of how I got into Ethereum, and then eventually what led me to where we are today.
Totally, and such an amazing journey. I think a lot of us nowadays kind of take for granted that the whole ICO boom happened and it kind of left a bad taste in everyone's mouths. But if you really stop and think about it, there's never been that sort of decentralized deployment of capital on the scale of millions or billions that happened before ICOs on Ethereum. So really, really mind-boggling to think about. So speaking of Consensus, Harrison, I was talking to somebody recently at Consensus who said that they understood the internet computer after just one conversation with you. So how do you explain the internet computer to the Ethereum community? What is its place within the open web?
Yeah. So the analogy I've been using that I think people like is, I believe what Ethereum is to decentralize financial infrastructure, the internet computer will be to decentralize web infrastructure. And so basically, before Ethereum, you had a lot of projects that were trying to essentially create like application specific blockchains for whatever it is they were trying to do. Then you had Ethereum come along, and now you had this general purpose blockchain where imagine if every DeFi project, MakerDAO and Uniswap and Compound and Aave, were first trying to all create their own blockchains, but now have this platform that everyone could just outsource that to essentially a general purpose platform and then just worry about their specific application or logic. And we saw what that's done to define the number of these applications and use cases. Now you have a similar platform where you can now do it for the non-financial uses of the web. And so that's sort of how I explain it, or how I tell people to think about it is, even though it can be used for financial use cases, that's really where I see it being super powerful and like adding a lot of value to Ethereum, is as this kind of sister platform, where all the same benefits you get on Ethereum, now you could get for essentially all those other aspects of your Ethereum application or other types of applications that maybe didn't make sense to build on Ethereum, or parts, such as like, the front end, or these supporting infrastructure and protocols. For example, like things like the graph, or I don't know, Chainlink, or Pocket Network, or some of these like supporting infrastructure protocols. For the last 2 years or so, they've all had to try to build their own blockchains to provide that use case. But now you wouldn't need to do that. You could build a protocol like the graph, but instead of needing to worry about your own blockchain and your own consensus and your own security and all the validators and all these things, you could essentially build it as like a canister-based open internet service where you outsource that to the internet computer network, and just focus on your specific applications, such as indexing data. So I think we're going to see a similar explosion into web infrastructure, open internet services. And so that's how I kind of try to frame it for myself and the products we try to build at Fleek, but also for other people to understand it and how to leverage it, and kind of, how I see it playing out.
Definitely. So crypto tends to be quite a tribalistic space, right? Not even just among different platforms, but also even if you're paying attention to different Ethereum NFT projects like Bored Apes and Pudgy Penguins, there's a lot of like fighting that happens between these platforms. So in the context of your different product lines, Harrison, like Fleek and Plug and Dank, can you talk us through your vision of interoperability with the internet computer and Ethereum and possibly even beyond?
Yeah, for sure. So we basically are trying to live at the intersection of Ethereum and the internet computer. Our Fleek's kind of DNA since the beginning has been to support the Ethereum ecosystem with their needs off of Ethereum. And we just see the internet computer as being a perfect complement for many of those things we've been doing already for the past few years, but also for new things we've been wanting to do for the past few years, but it's been kind of not really possible, or not possible in a trustless way. And so the idea for us is that once this kind of native bridge is released, and you do have the ability to call like bi-directionally between the networks without the need for a bridge, it's going to be a turning point in the Web3 ecosystem. And so everything we're doing is kind of to prepare for that moment and what comes after that. And so with Fleek, the idea all along has been like, how can we decentralize Fleek and make it trustless? The Fleek platform is really just like a DynamoDB, some Lambda functions, and like a static front end. So that's very possible to just rebuild on the internet computer. And then once you have an integration like with Ethereum, not only could we build a trustless developer platform for the internet computer on the internet computer entirely, but you'd be able to deploy NFTs or query data from either network or do all sorts of crazy things. And so the long-term goal for Fleek is to kind of be like what Uniswap is to Coinbase, for Fleek to be that equivalent to like an AWS and just be a trustless kind of platform for development that's community owned and governed, and essentially like similar to these kind of DeFi interfaces that sit on top of a bunch of different DeFi protocols and surface it in a seamless user experience, do the same thing, but sit on top of all these different web infrastructure protocols and open internet services that are being built for the internet computer. So you have that seamless developer experience, but it's not touching any centralized infrastructure at all, and is actually, censorship resistant and trustless and all those things. Everything we've built so far has basically been things we've realized we needed in order to build a platform like that. So to start, for a internet computer developer platform, a trustless version of Fleek, the first version of which will probably drop next week. V1 won't be like crazy, but it's a start, and we have a cool roadmap. But basically, what took us so long is first we realized, like, how do we get people in a browser experience access to cycles? So that's where early on we went down the whole path with the foundation of the Cycles wallet and internet identity and all those things, and came up with, kind of like, we come from an Ethereum side of things. So we love things about Ethereum, like having one account or wallet that you use across multiple apps. You sort of bring your assets with you to interfaces, not have assets that are interface specific. And also having one unique identifier that could do everything. And so part of what we wanted to do early on was say, like, maybe we're wrong, but we think this is how Web3 is going to play out. You're going to want one unique identifier that could do everything across multiple apps. So we don't necessarily think you're going to want a separate Cycles wallet and a separate unique identifier just to do something like hold cycles. So that's where the idea for Dank and a Cycles token that also wrapped the functionality of a Cycles wallet. So you could deploy canisters, you could proxy calls, you could do everything that a Cycles wallet could do, but hold it and interact with it and utilize it like a normal token. Then it was, okay, so now principal IDs could hold this Cycles token, but how do we actually get the principal ID into the browser, into the application? So that's where we talked with the internet identity team, understood the direction they were going. They seemed to be really focused on more of like a Web 2 paradigm, with some of the security trade-offs and other things they took into consideration. But again, everything we do is preparing for this moment where we want it to be as seamless and frictionless between the internet computer and Ethereum. And we just didn't see a future where tokens, DeFi, NFTs, Web3, all the composability you get that makes Ethereum what Ethereum is. And also when that bridge happens and now you can connect to both networks, we just felt that internet identity introduced a lot of friction that could take away some of that magic. So we said, maybe we're wrong. Maybe the ecosystem does get behind internet identity, but for the Web3 ecosystem and the use cases we think are going to take off first, we think they're going to like a product and users are going to want a user experience like this. So, and it solved the problem where now we have a wallet that people could hold this XTC token in. But really, like, across all the products and Plug specifically, like, we think that once Bitcoin and Ethereum are natively integrated, you have a really unique opportunity where now you could have one wallet. Maybe it's, not just like a principal ID, but it evolves into a canister-based wallet where you could essentially manage not only your internet computer tokens and assets, but your Ethereum tokens and assets all from one wallet. And that's really cool because then like, you now have this one sort of canister that could handle all your needs. You could use it to buy stuff on OpenSea. You could use it to interact with a social app on the internet computer. You could do all sorts of things. So that's really where, like with all of our products, we're really just trying to think long term. How is this going to look if this bridge actually works? And you can have this native integration with Ethereum, and the internet computer does become the winning layer 2 for Ethereum. So that's really the thesis that drives everything. Is we believe that the internet computer and its capabilities are going to be very attractive, that eventually it could win out as the preferred layer 2 scaling solution for Ethereum. And so how does that future look, and how can we position our products to best support that future? And so, yeah, I'll stop there, but that's kind of, yeah.
Definitely. And I appreciate how you have such a strong vision for the internet computer ecosystem and its place within the overall open web, because a lot of things are super new, right? And I think that's one of the exciting parts of being part of the internet computer community at this stage. You have nothing set in stone, there's no playbook. And it's really up to the community to determine the direction that we go in. So Harrison, there was a moment last week between Tonic Labs and Fleek on Twitter around the integration of the EXT standard with Plug. So disclaimer, I am a supporter of all projects within the ecosystem. I want everybody to thrive. And honestly, for me, I think the largest question that came up around this discussion is around standards with the internet computer ecosystem. So what are your thoughts around creating an NFT standard for the IC, or when it comes to other standards as well?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think it's very important to get it right. And I think that like standards aren't something that I or someone else or even a small group of people should decide like this is a standard. It's like a standard becomes a standard when a wide group of people all agree and get behind something and start utilizing it. And so, we have been for a while trying to get people to agree on a standard, because like developing Plug, it's way easier for us if we just have to support one standard. So we were trying to push that initially to say, let's just pick one and like, all right, this one's early and it's got some early traction, so let's just go with it. But the hard part is there's a lot of good projects in the ecosystem. And right now they might not be speaking up, but they're speaking with their code essentially, and that they are all kind of going in their own direction. And I've spoken to most of the teams, both on the fungible token side and the NFT side. And I think it's actually not a bad thing to let there be some competing standards at this stage of the ecosystem, because I think the pros and cons of that outweigh the pros of that outweigh the cons of picking a standard too early and making the wrong decision. And so in thinking about it more recently, I've actually personally come to the conclusion that it is almost critical that a fungible token standard and an NFT standard on the internet computer match the ERC20 and ERC essentially 721 and 1155 interfaces of Ethereum. And again, this goes back to, let's not think about like right now. Let's think about in a year from now, if we really do have this native integration with Ethereum. Now, let's say you do have apps where you can swap an internet computer native NFT, or you could swap, an Ethereum NFT, or maybe like, who knows what sort of crazy logic you have. So now if you don't match the standards or the interfaces, you run into some weird issues where now you have to treat assets differently on the different networks. And so then you would ask like, so why what benefit would you have of introducing that friction? Because ERC20, 721, like these are widely accepted standards. And let's not just think about the internet computer calling Ethereum. Let's think about Ethereum being able to natively call the internet computer. So now OpenSea, all these huge platforms that already have, and wallets that already have an interface and support assets and tokens. Now all of a sudden you make the integration for them much harder. So like, but again, it's like, we weren't thinking about that when we were just trying to say a month or two ago, hey, let's pick a standard and let's just, get the community behind it so we don't have to do a ton of work with Plug. We have kind of reevaluated that to say, all right, it does seem like there's a lot of groups going in their own direction. Maybe that's okay for now. Let's just support multiple. But let's start putting out more content and let's, try to open the discussion, because it really only has been a month, since the first NFT or token like existed on the internet computer. It's not too late. And like I said, I do think some of these decisions, if not like thought about carefully, could have negative consequences down the road, or just create barriers and friction that we don't want as an ecosystem. And so, like, given how familiar people are with those standards, given how much existing support there are for those standards, I've yet to see a good reason why we wouldn't use those interfaces. That doesn't mean you can't have an extensible framework that, like, you could add a bunch of stuff to, and like in the future to take advantage of the internet computer's capabilities. But I do think interface wise, I do think it would be a missed opportunity to not align as closely as possible with Ethereum and make, follow the path that Dom is following with this native bridge of saying we want to make it super seamless where you can't even tell the difference between the networks. I think we should follow that philosophy for assets too. And I don't really see a benefit to not doing that. I don't think it gives up any of the potential or added capabilities you could add underneath that interface. But interface wise, that's sort of, how I feel about things.
Yeah, I definitely understand where you're coming from, because currently, if you're looking at NFTs on Solana or the internet computer or Ethereum, it's all rather fragmented, right? Depending on the platform upon which the NFT exists. So in your particular vision of the NFT standard, you are saying right now, Ethereum is the dominant platform for NFTs with the ERC 721. So it would make the most sense for us not to splinter off of that and rather aggregate and roll up into this existing standard if we're able to do so anyway by making the internet computer interoperable with Ethereum. So do you see a world in which it might make sense to have a parallel standard? So some NFTs on the internet computer roll up to this Ethereum standard and some NFTs maintain their own NFT standard?
I think there could be 10 standards, but they just need to all use the same interface. It's like on Ethereum, you have ERC 721 and 1155, but they use the same interface. So a wallet or an app knows how to surface them. It's really like three things. It's like, where do I get the data? How do I transfer this thing? And there's one other thing, but I forgot it. But you need three simple things. So it's and I think that's slowly what's starting to happen. In speaking with Tonic and speaking with some of the other groups working on NFTs, you could have multiple standards. And I think the design space for NFTs is so big, you should have multiple standards for multiple types of NFTs. But I do think that you could all use the same interface. So this way, that part is super standard. And then you don't give up the potential of kind of being able to interact with the Ethereum assets, bringing them over to the internet computer, having apps that could call assets on both, and making it super simple for not only the internet computer apps, and interfaces that want to surface these assets, but also the existing Ethereum apps and interfaces that have huge user bases and a lot of liquidity. You know, there's definitely a benefit to being able to tap internet computer assets into that. And so like right now, everyone's thinking about bridges and then mirroring assets, but once you have this native integration, you don't need that anymore. And that's a crazy part to think about. So I just feel like, you know, but I could be wrong.
Yeah,
You know?
I mean, it is early days, and it remains to be seen what happens with NFTs upon the internet computer. But I will share a quick anecdote. I have a friend who is a very talented artist who's looking to get into the NFT space. So he asks me, you know, where should I deploy my NFT? Should it be the IC? Should it be Ethereum? And at the end of the day, it's really up to him, right? Because for me, being a part of the internet computer ecosystem, I'm obviously going to say the internet computer, but right now it's undeniable that Ethereum's NFT ecosystem is just much larger and would probably get more eyeballs. So if we were to have that pure interoperability between the internet computer and Ethereum, it's like you don't really have to choose between one platform or another. I do really enjoy debates around standard setting because there's no way, I think, to supercharge the growth of the ecosystem without some defined standards. And if there is some appetite for it in the near future, I would love to host some sort of, you know, standard setting panel for everybody in the ecosystem who is involved in creating NFTs. So let us know in the comments if you're interested in seeing that. So next question, Harrison. So IC Punks had a drop that was around an hour ago. How did Plug become one of the options to support the IC Punks drop? And were there any learnings for you guys as Plug?
Yes, for sure. Besides needing to hire a full-time QA person immediately, you know, we got like something crazy like 10,000 users in the last 2 days. So it's amazing to see that sort of interest for just any internet computer, you know, app or project. But really it was just, you know, Plug is basically a B2B2C model. So our goal is, you know, we want to just support the best apps because those apps are essentially what drives Plug users, you know? And so it's basically, we're just trying to work with everyone in the ecosystem. We saw an opportunity to where early when they announced their project, they were planning to go with internet identity. A few users in their community had suggested Plug as an alternative. And so we just connected with them, saw it was possible. It aligned with our roadmap to have, you know, the functionality to support a launch like that. So I would say, like, it wasn't anything besides we were just supporting them to make sure the integration went well and didn't break. I think, I don't know if it was us breaking or the internet computer breaking. I know like us and IC Rocks and their website had a few issues. So we're still trying to figure those things out, but it was an amazing learning experience. Reminds me of like CryptoKitties launch on Ethereum a few years ago. But yeah, like, you know, going back to like why we did them first, it was nothing personal. It was just like, we saw an opportunity where we knew we were going to add both. It was just the ordering of things where we realized we would capture a tremendous incoming number of users who were interested in that drop. Whereas if we missed that drop and did it in reverse order, there's no way we'd be at the user count we are today. And now, if anything, that will just have a wider audience for when we add EXT NFT support next week or something. So like, you know, maybe some people don't agree with the steps we take to get somewhere, but at the end of the day, we think it was in the best interest of the ecosystem, and you know, we're trying to support everyone. Like we're only successful if we could support the largest percentage of the ecosystem and the largest percentage of assets. But we're like everyone, we're limited resources, trying to do a lot. So, sometimes there's miscommunication or, but
That's
it worked out.
part of the fun of it all.
Exactly.
And certainly if you look at the different stages in the life of Ethereum, it's not all been smooth sailing. And I think there will be bumps along the way too for the internet computer's journey, and there already have been. So excited to see what the future has in store. So Harrison, talk us through what is on the roadmap for Fleek. I think you had maybe an announcement that you were going to make in the near future. Do you want to share with the audience today?
Sure. Well, we have several announcements. I don't know if or when I'm sure we will. We're just, there's so much going on. It's hard to remember what we share. But well, I'd say on one note, something we'll probably mention this fall is we have raised a pretty significant sized fund for investing in the internet computer ecosystem. So we're already starting to deploy checks into some of the early projects, but I'm really excited about that because I think VCs are very good at providing signal and maybe in participating in governance, but I see a gap in terms of the help projects need, especially given the internet computer is so new. And I'm hoping we can be a very value add investor and partner to some of these early projects and entrepreneurs. So that's one thing. But on the product roadmap, I would say one thing we are excited about, our trend is, and one mistake I see a lot of other ecosystems that are kind of framed as ETH killers making is they're just stealing Ethereum ideas and then calling it the TRC20 or the whatever, or just legitimately ripping off NFT art and launching it, or coming up with their own naming system for their own protocol. And I feel like the internet computer, especially given the chain key capabilities of natively integrating, has a real big opportunity to differentiate itself and actually align with Ethereum. And so on that note, there is one trend I've seen recently that I'm not a big fan of, which is that basically the problem I see right now with the internet computer is I see just apps that are essentially just Web 2 apps building on the internet computer. And I think internet identity is a big part of that problem because you can't connect them. So now you have a situation where you have 3 really cool early apps in Discover, Open Chat, District. And you already have 3 different usernames on the internet computer. So it feels like it's going in a very Web 2 direction. And so one of the beauties of Ethereum is you have an ENS naming system where no app creates their own naming system. You have this one that apps are free to use. You can still create your own if you want. No one's forced to use ENS, but it's just a great kind of asset that the community gets behind. And it solves this issue where now, any app can just surface a name, a username, or profile information. And so one thing we are releasing fairly soon is essentially a ICP registry powered by ENS, where effectively users will be able to purchase .icp names. But in addition to them being in an internet computer canister, they are also added as subdomains on the ENS registry under the ICP.F name that we own, but eventually this naming canister will own. which is another cool thing about the native integration, is like that canister could actually own that ENS name and trustlessly make the updates. So it's just a really cool early way to showcase that Ethereum assets can be leveraged on the internet computer as a layer 2. And we think that'll just kind of open people's eyes to understanding that, like, hey, we don't have to create everything from scratch. You know, once this integration comes, there's a whole sea of value and assets and like use cases that are fine to live on Ethereum as the base layer, but can be leveraged on something like the internet computer for whatever it is. So instead of going down the path, the reason we wanted to do it, ENS is a big part of our success as Fleek so far. We host like over 25,000 sites. Almost half of them use ENS as added domain. So we love the project. We think they're doing amazing work. And yeah, we're not like, we don't think there needs to be multiple naming systems, you know, they just added support for DNS. So part of what we're going to be doing is bringing ENS to the internet computer. But as a first product for that, there will be a dedicated .ICP registry. So people on the internet computer can have that branding and, you know, maybe don't want to use a .f name, but they'd love a .ICP name. And now in Plug or any app that integrates Plug, it would just be an extra API call where you could surface this profile name that's trustlessly living in a canister on the internet computer, but also is trustlessly living on Ethereum as a subdomain. So you could actually use it on either network. So that's one thing. And the other big announcement is that we essentially acquired a gaming studio and are now starting to develop games on the internet computer. So our first game will hopefully launch towards the end of the year, but that's pretty much, we're at max capacity. We're trying to hire as fast as we can, but it's hard. So that's really what the roadmap holds for the rest of the year is just Plug mobile app is the big one, and continuing to advance the Plug roadmap. That's our priority number one. The Fleek development platform, and then just, you know, continuing to try to fill in the gaps on some of these missing like infrastructure pieces, but do it in a thoughtful way where we really align with the Ethereum community and really try to change their opinion. Because right now, you know, it's like, you won't find an Ethereum community member who will mention the word Dfinity or internet computer. So we're trying really hard to change that. And we think like doing things, you know, in a non-competitive way, but hey, we're actually leveraging ENS or, you know, some of these other existing protocols that the Ethereum community loves. So it's, hey, now you could actually use your .f name on the internet computer. Things like that, we think is going to pay like some really big dividends down the road. So yeah, that's kind of a high level summary of what we're doing.
Definitely. So first of all, Harrison, how do you sleep? I mean, do you sleep? Like, there's so much stuff going on all the time with Fleek and Plug and so on and so forth. I think, you know, you and your team have been especially impressive in terms of the pace of the execution, which is always so challenging, especially given this kind of nascent technology. And then second of all, as a closer question, before we move on to the community Q&A, so in a lot of your product vision, you are aligning back with Ethereum because it is the dominant ecosystem of the moment, right? Like with the ICP registry thing that you had mentioned, which links back to ENS, and so on and so forth with the NFT standard setting, it really just all comes back to Ethereum. But just to play devil's avocado, what do you think about the possibility that the internet computer is the dominant platform of the future? So for example, if you look at the top 5, you know, tech companies by market cap, maybe 20 or 30 years ago, you'd get like IBM and Yahoo and all of these companies that are not as relevant anymore. And you see the same sort of trend when you're looking at market cap when it comes to crypto. So, you know, ETH fans, don't come after me. I'm also an ETH community member. I love Ethereum. But do you see a world in which the internet computer ecosystem supplants that of the Ethereum ecosystem?
Well, I would say actions speak louder than words, and I have, dedicated Fleek's future and embedding basically everything on the internet computer. So I am very bullish. I do think at the end of the day, the two main protocols in Web3 will be the internet computer and Ethereum. I definitely think in terms of computation, the internet computer could like be handling more of the world's software. But I do think like the internet of value might exist on Ethereum, but it doesn't mean that that value might not move more on the internet computer, and Ethereum kind of be the base layer where it all settles at the end of the day, or but it's just Ethereum it's something special, and like the community they have is incredible. And if it was just DeFi, I would say yes, maybe, but with NFTs and culture and everything, it's just like everything's possible, and I've been so wrong in this space so many times. So like, but I just think it's too early to make claims like that, because I think the internet computer does have some pretty big challenges to work out in terms of immutability, in terms of what we've seen today with just like we're a long ways away from being scalable, in terms of having a competitive storage market to compete with other just storage networks like Arweave or others that are making really good progress in some of these use cases that Ethereum needs, like NFTs and stuff. So but again, like actions speak loudest, and I'm all in on the internet computer. But market cap wise, it's hard to tell. Let's see how this NNS governance experiment goes, and what changes get made to the protocol and how that might affect token price. But I think both are going to be insanely valuable. I don't know which one's going to be more, so I just go 50-50 and kind of just am happy with the outcome either way. But yeah, I definitely am confident that they will be the number 1 and 2 protocol in 5 years from now.
I completely agree. And I think the future is going to be a multi-chain world when it comes to open web. So thank you, Harrison. Let's open it up for community Q&A. So the first question we have here is, are you working on price oracles? And if not, how do you think oracles should be implemented on the internet computer?
We're not working on it. I do think oracles is pretty cool. I think it could work very similar to something like Chainlink, but could there be an internet computer native version of it that works better? Yeah, it's possible. But we've definitely run into situations where we could use oracles, not even just for pricing, but anything. And so one thing I'll say is I do think there's 2 different things that are needed. One is oracles, but oracles is more so for like public data that multiple people have access to. The other thing that's very needed and interesting is like connectors to like a Stripe API or a GitHub API or different things where maybe it's not publicly available to everybody, but it's data that one specific canister needs, and only that one specific API key has access to it. And so I think both are very needed. I will say the hard part in the ecosystem, if it's because you're looking for an idea to build, like at Fleek, like what I try to say is standards are great, and building frameworks and standards are super important. But value capture wise, like the internet computer is unique where like what is stopping someone from just taking the code and deploying the canister themselves, versus like an open internet service where there's some benefit to aggregating or doing it as a pooled service. And so that's like where oracles definitely make sense, but a connector service would be harder to maybe monetize, because that might be something that everyone's deploying for themselves because it's their own API keys and it just makes more sense for them to deploy themselves. So it's definitely something to factor in. Oracles are a proven sort of crypto network economic model. But yeah, I think both are very needed.
Cool. Thank you, Harrison. So we did get a couple of questions around the IC Punks drop. So I will amalgamate them into one question. How do you evaluate performance-wise the IC stress test from the IC Punks release? During that drop, there were some issues with the IC Punks site itself, as well as internet identity. Did Plug itself have issues? And did Plug users get all of the NFTs that they were trying to claim?
I'll go in reverse order. So that, I don't know, I doubt it. But I know many people were having issues. I didn't even get one. So
I know, same.
Yeah.
It's like refreshing.
Yeah. And also just dealing with 10,000 angry IC Punk fans and trying to help them with customer support kept most of us busy. You know, I think IC Punks tried to start with their front end on the internet computer. I think that was a very like noble like move. But I mean, these NFT drops, if you try to participate in any of them, it's crazy. So anytime you have that many people trying to get access to a like limited time, limited number of things, mayhem ensues. And so the stress test of the internet computer, I would say, was a bit concerning. I think like we haven't had time to really look into it to know whose fault some of these errors were. For example, on Plug right now, we don't do any caching. We're going to change that next week because it bothers me so much. It kills the user experience of Plug that every time you switch tabs, it loads. So I'm on it. I promise that'll be fixed soon. But assets weren't loading as quickly as they normally would. Sometimes it like wouldn't load at all. So was that a Plug fault, or was that we were like the IC, like those subnets were just not able to handle the sheer number of requests that they were getting between Plug, IC Rocks, IC Punks. So that's something where like we just have to figure out how to deal with situations like that. And like, you know, I think things definitely could have gone better on everyone's side. But everyone was trying to rush things out to launch, you know, on a tight timeline. Especially as Plug, we didn't want to push fixes and potentially mess up the launch because we knew that would have ended up worse. And also we have like the browser store to deal with. So even if we push fixes, we have to wait sometimes a few hours, sometimes a few days for Chrome to review it. So we're definitely learning things on the process side, because given a consumer product has way higher standards, you know, we want to live up to them and exceed them. I'm sure IC Punks learned a lot, and I'm sure the internet computer team learned a lot. But all in all, I think it was a fantastic experiment. I think all three groups will be better because of it. But yes, definitely things we could have done better. But we tried our best. That I assure you.
Definitely. And I'm sure there will be some sort of lengthy postmortem that gets posted to social channels rather soon. And again, for our community members who are asking about it, it's so fresh, it just happened. I think people need time to really dive into the details and analyze like what happened and what was the root cause of it and how do we fix it and so on and so forth. But we hope to keep you posted on all of the details across all of the various teams. Cool. So Harrison, I think you already touched upon this briefly, but in terms of the roadmap of Plug, you know, other than adding caching, what else are you looking forward to adding to in terms of the roadmap?
Yeah, so basically, on the immediate roadmap is EXT NFT support, um, and this caching sort of issue. After that, um, probably some things that came out of this experience today that we probably just need to like figure out or talk with the foundation about, just subnet capacity and how some of these issues are going to be handled, or how we should think about handling them. After that, we do want to support neurons as NFTs. We think that would be cool. Adding Ledger support to Plug, once that app gets approved by Ledger, is on the roadmap. And then the big thing that has been what most people are asking for and is also very interesting is just how many people don't even have a computer and just have a phone and want a mobile app. So that's a big thing on our priority list. Probably priority number one, to get out in hopefully like November, is a Plug mobile app. And so, but we'd love to hear feature ideas from people. And also in September, we are adding support for DFinance's ERC20 fungible token standard. Because again, like we're just trying to support as many early good projects as possible, learn and iterate based on the data and feedback. So we think it's a cool project. Their testnet app looks super cool. And so right now we wouldn't be able to support them. They want to integrate Plug, but we wouldn't be able to surface their assets in Plug with the current token standard we support, which is just EXT single token canisters. So that's on the roadmap. But yeah, if anyone has ideas for features, we'd love to hear them, because like on the Fleek.co side, most of our features and roadmap for the past year were just kind of, besides big ones like let's support internet computer hosting, are mostly community driven.
Definitely. And I love the idea of having a mobile version of Plug. Just a couple of weekends ago, I was participating in an NFT drop on Ethereum, but I was like away on a weekend trip in a rural area. So I was like on my phone on the MetaMask mobile app, and everything worked out really nicely, like much better than I expected. And, I would expect no less from Plug as a user experience. So next question from the community. What difference will the NFT contracts that will be minted on the internet computer differ from those over Ethereum? I think the community members are referring to like the ones that are interoperable with Ethereum. Also, is it because NFTs are a hot topic nowadays that you're focusing on this topic of NFT standards, or do you think the internet computer will be better for NFTs and NFTs will be a major use case?
I personally think the internet computer is like the perfect platform for NFTs, gaming, and the metaverse. That's why we decided to make a big move in that direction. Is, I think like the DeFi wave is going to look small compared to this gaming wave that comes next. I think play to earn gaming is like going to fundamentally change like society and the world. And I think kids growing up these days won't spend time on social platforms. They'll be spending time in metaverses. And so, I think the internet computer has a long way to go to actually support some of these use cases, especially ones that require low latency. But I think for the use cases today of NFTs, you're eventually like this NFT bubble right now is so similar to the ICO bubble. It's like, it's so funny, just how history rhymes. But I do think, similar to that ICO, like it's going to take more than a white paper or a pretty JPEG to like build a real like good NFT project after this, bubble pops, even if it's not as long as the ice, like kind of last crypto winter. And I think, some of the things Hazel's been talking about, some of the things NFT Studio is working on, like the capabilities you could add to these, like everything could be an NFT. like your app, your site, your, you know, the amount of logic your game could be an NFT, and like the amount of experiences you could serve. So for that like that metaverse future, I do think that even like I said, for these use cases and these NFTs and assets on Ethereum, I could very much see that they would go to the internet computer to then actually build use cases around or be used in games like Axie Infinity or Illuvium. The assets are on Ethereum. They actually built their own side chain. But again, now if you have a platform where you don't need to build your own side chain, you'd probably save the time and just do it on the internet computer, especially given it's got a lot more capability than just what you could do in Solidity. But the majority of their game runs on GCP right now. So imagine you could do that on the internet computer instead, where the assets, the game logic, the simulations, everything are actually running in a trustless environment like the internet computer, where, you know, you don't have to worry about getting deplatformed, or you don't have to worry about something, you know, sketchy going on in the simulation, or is it rigged, which, you know, I still think anytime like I play a game and lose. So I do think that NFTs are a hot topic. I do think though that they have real like long-term staying power. And so it's a focus of ours, but not really outside the context of plug, and just trying to be alert and pay attention to what's going on in the market. Because a big part of it is like, there's so many ideas. I call it the kid in the candy store problem right now. It's just like, there's so many things to build. You could get distracted like trying to build, but a big factor is like timing. What is the right thing to build first that the market is going to like use now? And like, so that's where like I give Tonic credit, is like they've advanced things in terms of NFTs on the internet computer much faster than I thought NFTs on the internet computer were going to be a thing. And obviously they saw that, and then they sort of shifted priorities to be like, all right, this is working, so let's focus on this, and, you know, let's put this game or this other thing we're going to do to the side, because these NFTs are what the market is telling us to focus on. So similarly, it's like when you see something like that, you gotta live to fight another day. So if we were trying to, you know, we supported fungible tokens first before we realized there's not a single fungible token on the internet computer that is anyone's actually using, besides maybe XTC, you know, for some development stuff, but that's really it. So NFTs are where there's activity today. We kind of just have to follow the narratives and kind of go in the order of what's going to get used today, not in 2 years from now, just so we can be around in 2 years from now to then build those things that we think are good long-term ideas. And in terms of the main difference between Ethereum NFTs and internet computer NFTs that I think is an amazing thing about the internet computer NFTs is that you could actually build the buying and selling and auctioning of an NFT into the NFT itself. Besides all this added functionality and logic, where, you know, if you wanted to build a Netflix or a Spotify, you know, you could, even if those assets of the songs or whatever lived on Ethereum, you can now bring it to the internet computer, and all that streaming logic, all that royalty logic, things that like Hazel is doing a lot of research around. That's how I see it playing out. But the fact that like OpenSea has completely captured the market on Ethereum, and it's because you can't, or Ethereum didn't think to build natively into each NFT the ability to sell itself. So now you're basically married to these walled garden interfaces. And so I think a big opportunity, again, where like we're early right now, but I do think people are getting behind that trend, is these NFTs should not be married and only be able to list on one marketplace or one interface. It should be like DeFi and Uniswap liquidity, where any interface could surface that liquidity. And now you have just every interface competing to create the best user experiences for users, and all different sorts of, you know, and that's best for the market. Whereas OpenSea could basically not innovate at all anymore, and like it's almost a done deal. They won the space. So that is one huge advantage where, imagine an interface like Plug or, anyone else who wanted to build an NFT marketplace. It could be like the new drop shipping type of store where you just create a cool experience, or you might want to be in a metaverse experience and buy an item in that experience. And so if you have this sale and auction ability, imagine you could surface it, but if you all are using the same standard and interface, you'd be able to search for that flag to say, is this for sale? Yes or no, and what's the price? So now in any interface or any experience you want, that user would be able to see it, buy it right where they are, and it would be like super seamless and again, super composable. So that's one of the most exciting things about IC NFTs, in my opinion.
Definitely. And I think I saw a tweet the other day saying that OpenSea will probably be like the Coinbase of NFT marketplaces. But, especially for the internet computer, I'm very curious to see what would be the decentralized version of that. So we are at time. Harrison, thank you so much for coming on Community Conversations. I really enjoyed our chat. We had a ton of questions from the community. So see everyone next time at the Community Conversations. And thank you again for your participation. Bye.